talking about participants in global financial system. Participants in global financial system. That point we were discussing. Let me share with you that particular screen. 1 second. These are the participants in the global financial system. We were discussing this point. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So, if possible, you can have a screenshot of this PPT. Can you able to see this PPT? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the global financial system and its participants. Now, government treasuries. I give the example. If you're talking about India, then for India, Reserve Bank of India is the government treasurer. If you're talking about USA, then there is Federal Bank in America, USA, which is government treasurer. And supervisory authorities, again the same, central banks are supervisory authorities. Then accounting standard board, I told you yesterday that GAAP stand for generally accepted accounting principle. So in every country, they might be having their different standards, but if everyone has a different standard and if it is not matching with the other country, then the problem may arise in business. Now, to eradicate these problems or to minimize these problems, that is why the international accounting standard concept came into practice. International accounting standards. Now even our accounting standards are at par with the global level. So whatever accounts we prepare, that balance sheet or profit and loss account, it is being acceptable even other countries also. And the other country, if they have prepared their financial statement in the form of profit and loss account and balance sheet, so by referring, we also understand their financial position or performance. So these accounting standards bodies are also playing an important role in this financial system. Otherwise, what will happen? Then there will not be a standardized practice between or among different countries. Now, let me give the example. Suppose accounting standard, like say disclosure policy, which is AS6, disclosure policy. So every after financial statement, company will have to disclose their policies, like say for example depreciation policy, valuation of closing stock policy. So how do they value their closing stock? How do they charge their depreciation? So that disclosure policy should be followed by each and every company. And this helps in maintaining transparency between the transaction. Then multinational enterprises, MCE. Now what it is? Multinational enterprises. Now there are companies who are being doing transactions not only with a single country but multiple with various countries. So multinational enterprises. For example, now our Indian company Infosys, which is into the IT domain. So Infosys company do have their branches in America, maybe in Germany and so on. Similarly, foreign companies like say Google, they have their branches in India, maybe in China and so on. So these are the multinational enterprises. So they have their branches and offices across the globe. Institutional investors. Yesterday I gave you the example. Did you remember? Institutional investor. There are various types of investor: individual investor and institutional. Individual, like say you and me, we are also investing in companies. So they are called as an individual investor. Myself and yourself are individual investor. Institutional investors. Did you remember my example yesterday, which I quoted? आठवतंय का तुम्हाला? Do you remember? Yes, please. Not remembering?
So mutual funds.
Yes, mutual fund. Now mutual fund companies, correct? Mutual fund companies who are collecting saving from different individuals. So mutual fund companies is the example of institutional investor. So they can invest in foreign stock or domestic stock also. Like insurance companies. Now Life Insurance Corporation of India, LIC, is another institutional investor. So mutual fund and insurance company are the example of institutional investors. Now, the next participant is rating agencies. Now, what is their job? This agency, they rate the instrument of company. Now, instrument like say debenture or say public deposit. What do you mean by debenture? What is debenture? Yes. Hello, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So what is debenture?
So long-term security issued by the company.
Issued by company. Okay. So it is the long-term security which is issued by company where people invest in debenture. So a person who invests in debenture, they are creditor of company. And there are different types of debenture also, like say convertible debenture, non-convertible debenture, partially convertible debentures. Means after some time you can convert debentures into equity share, which is called as a convertible debentures. Non-convertible debentures are those debentures which cannot be converted into equity. So once the specific period is over, the money is returned back to the investor, and there is a timely interest payment also to the investor. Now, whenever company goes for issuing of debenture, they will have to take the rating from this agency. So rating agency's job is to give the specific rating, like say as we see a movie in whenever a movie is released in the theater. So there are some symbols which are given, single star, 2 star, 3 star. Are you aware of this system? These are the symbolic impressions given to the film, whether it is a Hindi film, a Bollywood movie, or a Hollywood movie. So 2 star, 3 star rating is given. Similarly, for debentures also, rating is given by, there are companies like say ICRA, CRISIL. These are the company who does the business of of rating instruments. AAA, triple B. Triple A means which indicates high safety. Triple A means high safety. Triple B, it is moderate safety, and triple C, which is means it is unsafe. So whenever these ratings are given, so the investor comes to know that whether to invest in this instrument or not. So that is called as a rating. So likewise, there are various participants who plays a dominant role in this global financial system. Now, in between, these are the black ovals which I have shown: currencies, commercial banks, financial market, and exchange rate. Now, currencies. If you are talking about the in a global scenario, is there a single currency or there are multi currencies in a global scenario? Yes. Is there single currency or multi currency at global level?
Multi-currency.
Multi currency. There is no single currency, multi currency, except European countries. They have developed one currency. European countries. Yesterday I mentioned which is their currency. European countries. They have developed one currency, but it is I think for nine or 10 nations are there, which is called as a euro. Euro. Have you heard this currency name? Euro. 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 Have you heard this currency name? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Euro. So it is the currency of European countries. So about there are 9 to 10 nations, they came together and they have developed one currency, which is euro, and that is just because to give a fight to the dollar, because earlier dollar was the only currency which was widely recognized at world level, but nowadays along with the dollar there is a euro, there is a pound. They are also having wide recognition. So euro, then in Japanese yen, then pound. These are some global currencies which is having wide recognition. Now, in case of India, we have rupiah as a currency. So whenever we deal with America or when we deal with Japan, then if you are dealing with America, then American currency is dollar. So we have to exchange our rupee into the dollar. So these exchange rates are also playing an important role in global financial system. So every country, as per their performance, their currency rates are there. Now, yesterday you told me the today's dollar rate equals to rupiah. It is 74. Means if you want to buy $1 in Indian currency, we have to pay 74 rupees. Then only we will get $1. So this exchange rate every day, not every day, but in every minute there is a change in exchange rate. But when you deal on a global level, so you want to have a surety of your exchange rate. So there are different terms which are used as a forward swap that we will be discussing in a second unit. But right now, you just remember that exchange rates are also playing important role in global financial system. Then comes to financial market. If you are talking about our national level, the financial markets, basically there are two markets. there are two market. Here, financial market, it is being divided into two market. One is primary market and the second one is secondary market. Primary and secondary market. Primary market, where first time security it is being issued in the market, that is known as primary market. And secondary market, where there is a continuous exchange of sale and purchase of shares, that is known as secondary market. So stock exchanges are there. With the help of stock exchange, the purchase of share and sale of share transaction continues. So financial market divided into primary and secondary market. So they do also have importance at a local level as well as global level. And fourth and last point, that is commercial bank. So if you're talking about our India level, we also have commercial banks. We have one Apex Bank. Apex Bank means a bank which controls all other banks in country. And may I know who is our Apex Bank in India? Apex Bank. Who is our Apex Bank in India? Yes, please. Which is the Apex Bank?
Sir, SBI Bank.
RBI. RBI is the Apex Bank. SBI, it is one of the public sector bank. Okay.
Yes, sir.
SBI is one of the public sector bank. RBI is Apex Bank. Apex Bank's अर्थ काय? Apex Bank is the bank which controls entire banking business. So in India, there is RBI, Reserve Bank of India, which controls all banks, starting off bank or some scams if happens in a bank. So these are the controlled by Reserve Bank of India. So Reserve Bank of India, public sector, public banks, as you just now mentioned, SBI. SBI is public public sector bank. Bank of Maharashtra is public sector bank. And there are also private bank like Axis Bank, HDFC Bank. These are the private banks. And foreign banks are also there, like Citibank is the example of foreign bank. So these all banks are also playing an important role in a global financial system, because without these banks, we may not be able to have cross-border business. So this was about the global financial system. Now, our after, because yesterday we started this point, and because of some power failure, there was some interruption. So I thought that why not to again give some time to clear this concept, global financial system. If in examination, if you are asked, please do remember this particular slide and explain accordingly. Now, today we will be talking about Bretton Woods system. Then number 2, gold standard, and then IMF, International Monetary Fund, and World Bank. And at the end of session, then we will talk about BOP, that is balance of payment. So let us start with this one by one. Let me take you the another slide. Can you see my screen?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Oh. Now, can you see screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, we'll be talking about this Bretton Woods system, what it is. Bretton Woods system. This point is being mentioned in our unit number 1. Now, what is this Bretton Woods system? This was established long back, that is in 1944. 1944 is the establishment year of Bretton Woods system. And this was established in USA. USA, there is one city, Hampshire is the name of that city. But just remember USA. Even if you mention USA, that is good enough. But if you want further detail, so this Bretton Woods system was established in Hampshire city in USA. Now, the story of this Bretton Woods system is that about 44 nations, they came together, and the prominent nations were America and Britain. So these two were leading nation, and there were other 42 nations, and these two nations, about 44 nations, and along with 730 delegates, they conducted one conference in the year 1944, and then they realized that if you want to broaden our business across the globe, then we have to have, because this was their agenda, cross-border transaction. Cross-border transaction means cross-border business. If you want to have a cross-border business, then there has to be uniformity. There has to be standardized practice. And this thought, it was in the 1944. Today we are in 2022. So very long back. So almost it is 80 years back. 80 years back, the conference was but again, this conference was in favor of a few countries, and few countries are nothing but the America and Britain. So this conference was favoring particularly these two countries, and rest of the countries, I'm not saying that it was not favorable, but the maximum support was given to America and Britain. And then slowly other countries, they came to know that this Bretton Woods system may not be supportive or may not be favorable. Other countries, like say developing countries and underdeveloped countries, are very far away from this conference. At least developing countries were close to this conference. And because of this reason, finally there was a collapse of this system in 1970. Remember this year. This Bretton Woods system collapsed. It means there was a closure in 1970. So establishment year was 1944, and closing year. Yes, what was the closing year of Bretton Woods system? Closure year 1970. But while closing this Bretton Woods system, two important thoughts was given by this conference, and this important thought was establishment of IMF, that is International Monetary Fund, and World Bank. So this thought, I think it was between 1966 to between 1970. The thought was given by the conference that we have to have these two leading bank at a global level: International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank. But before we talk about IMF and World Bank, let me share with you about gold standard. Gold standard. What is this concept? Now, gold standard. This concept actually came in 1870. In 1870, gold standard concept was established, and it continued till 1914, 1914. So from 1870 to 1914, and it continued. Actually, in 1914, there was the Second World War, and because of this Second World War, you might have heard this Second World War had collapsed most of the nation's economy. During Second World War, most of the even developed countries' economy adversely impact. It was having adverse impact because of this Second World War, and we cannot have a thought about developing and underdeveloped countries. They were having badly affected because of this Second World War. Now, in gold standard, in 1870 and between 1914, after gold standard, then they designated as a classical gold standard. It is one and the same gold standard, but the new word was classical gold standard. Classical gold standard. Now, in this classical gold standard, in a classical gold standard, their main agenda was to have a wide acceptability of domestic currency. To have wide acceptability of a domestic currency. That was their main agenda. But along with this agenda, the committee gave three principles. The first principle is that international payments would be made in gold, because it was a gold standard. So international payment would be made in gold. Number two, currencies were fully convertible into gold in both way, means gold and maybe in silver also. And export and import of gold was also allowed. So these principles were in 1870. But when Second World War happened in 1914, Second World War, it was happened in 1914. So that time even developed countries, they were also badly affected because of this war. And as you know, in war, who wins and who loses, that's a different story. But everyone gets affected because of war. Do you agree with this or not? In a war, who wins or who loses, that's a different story. But most of the countries gets affected because of war. Do you agree
Yes,
with
sir.
this? Yes. And this happens in 1914 also, particularly America. That time America gave proposal to the other countries that whenever we print our currency, so that much gold has to be preserved. That much gold there has to be reserve of gold. And then only the banks are allowed to print their currency. Otherwise, what will happen? Suppose in India, we have a Reserve Bank of India. So if Reserve Bank of India feels to print currency, so day and night they will continue their business of printing currency. So this will not happen that way. If you are there to print currency, you have to have that much gold reserve with central bank. Then only the permission is given. So way back, America, this is interesting to note that that time 1 ounce equal to $1. Do you know what do you mean by ounce? 1 ounce. How many grams gold comes in 1 ounce? Any idea? If not, I will tell you. 28 gram equals to 1 ounce. Like in India, we call as a tola, one tola. 1 tola means how many gram? In India, 1 tola means how many gram? Any idea? Am I audible? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
1 tola means how many gram?
Maybe sir 11%.
10 gram. 10 gram. 1 tola, it is 10 gram. Okay. Now, when this gold standard, classical gold standard was there in 1870, so that time America gave proposal that 1 ounce it is of 28 gram. So just imagine that 28 gram is almost in Indian language, it is almost 3 tola. 3 tola. That is 1 ounce. And then only you are allowed to print your currency. Now, the countries who were having ample amount of gold, so they started printing of their currency. But there were some countries who were having shortage of gold. And you might be aware that when India became independent in that year, previous to that, even we were rich with the gold. But when we became independent, that time we were also having a problem of reserve of gold, because most of the gold and precious metal were looted by Britishers, unfortunately. That story you might be aware. I am not the person who is interacting with you. You might have heard this. Are you aware of this fact? When India became independent, most of the gold and precious metal, like say even Kohinoor was also, we are not sure, but who is having Kohinoor right now? Kohinoor. Earlier, whose property was Kohinoor? Whose property was there? Kohinoor. Hello?
So I think so.
India. But unfortunately, this India's property was captured by the Britishers, and in that year, particularly in 1950, we were also facing the problem of gold. Now, not only India, but even other countries also. There were countries like Pakistan and other countries, even China. They had also biggest problem of gold. Now, in order to solve this gold problem, then Bretton Woods system gave the concept of IMF, International Monetary Fund and World Bank. So this way, it started. So first, Bretton Woods system. Prior to that, gold standard existed at a world level. After gold standard, then Bretton Woods system, and after Bretton Woods system, the new concept, that is World Bank and IMF, came. Now let me share with you about IMF, International Monetary Fund, what it is. Now, in regards to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, yes, this is the slide. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Now, as I told you, that Bretton Woods system, when it was came into existence, Bretton Woods system, when it existed in at a global level. Please remember the year 1944. Bretton Woods system कधी आली? In 1944, and when it was collapsed?
So 1970.
Correct, 1970 it was collapsed, and then just after Bretton Woods system, as I to give you that there was a thought given by the conference, and in 1945, just after 1 year of Bretton Woods system, this IMF was created in December 1945. That time there were 185 countries were the member of this IMF. Out of this 185, we were also one of the member. In 1945, we were the one of the member, and that time Britishers were ruling our country in 1945, because that time we were not independent. We got after 1945. Now, this IMF headquarter, it is at Washington, and the Board of Governors is the highest decision-making body. So the Board of Governors, naturally, the Board of Governors were from developed countries, European countries and America. They were having their representative on this board. So they were taking the decision which are favorable to these developing countries. Again, there was a partiality in IMF at the beginning, but gradually, as more and more countries became the member of International Monetary Fund, then there was little bit transparency. Now, with this view, the objectives of IMF, number one, to promote growth of trade. This was their prime objective, to promote the growth of trade, because they want to have across border business, whether it is food, grain, or maybe some cloth, etc. So that kind of business, there has to be growth in trade. And then second objective, to promote exchange rate stability. So I think even in 1945, when this IMF came into existence, this was a very important objective they had in their mind to promote exchange rate stability, because that time also there was a volatility in exchange rate, and today also you will observe that there is a lot of volatility in foreign currency. Then third is each member country contributes 25 of its quota in gold and remaining in own currency. Now this was little bit difficult criteria. Country like India also, developing countries and underdeveloped countries, this was little bit difficult for them. Each member country contributes 25% of its quota. So suppose if you are having a 50% quota, means your country will have that much representation in the global business and remaining in own currency. So that much amount we will have to keep with IMF. So this was the ways and means of IMF to develop their own funds. Now, if own reserves inadequate, now for example, suppose if a particular say a B country, they are not having their sufficient money, but they want to become a member of IMF. So what was the solution given? If own reserves inadequate, then borrow from IMF. Then again you have to borrow from IMF, and then you become a member of IMF. Why you want to become a member of IMF? Because you want to promote growth of trade, because every country would like to export their material to other countries so that the foreign currency will come to their country, and they want to minimize import. So that was the dream of every country. Now, but in order to fulfill that dream, in order to complete that dream, you should be a member of IMF. And if you are not having sufficient reserve, then you have to borrow from the IMF, and then you become a member. But fortunately, India was having sufficient money and gold, so we became a member of IMF without borrowing from them. And then another objective is help countries to overcome difficulties. Now, what are the difficulties? Like say poverty, natural disaster. Now, even these natural disasters like say flood or maybe earthquake. So during these natural disasters, even today also, if this natural disaster happens, then it creates a very adverse and bad impact on a particular nation's economy. So in order to overcome from this difficulty, IMF provide funds to this affected country. Now, there was a criticism. Borrowing money from IMF is a criticism, because if you are borrowing money from IMF, then you have to naturally listen to the developed countries. Recently, there was a quarrel when you might have heard. This is not a old story. Just I think 4 or 5 months back, IMF denied to give funds to Pakistan when Pakistan Prime Minister, he gave a proposal to IMF that for fund assistance. So IMF, they were not inclined to give funds to the Pakistan. But apart from this criticism, if you observe their basically this first goal or first objective to promote the growth of trade, this is one of the important objective not from the point of view IMF, but even almost all countries, they want to have a growth of trade, and that is why they are becoming member of this IMF. So today there are 200 plus countries who are a member of IMF. Very few countries who are not a member of IMF, otherwise almost all. But again, we can criticize on this system, quota system. This quota system has created the influence level of a particular country. If a particular country, if he is having highest quota, then naturally they have biggest influence over that IMF. And the example is America. Now, America has given a huge, has taken a huge amount of quota from IMF. So their influence is quite bigger than compared to other countries. And the second one is even China. China is also having influence over IMF. Now, so this was about IMF, and even Bretton Woods system gave another concept, that is World Bank. So now let us know about World Bank. So I have taken a screenshot of this International Monetary Fund, IMF. Have you taken a screenshot? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now let us go ahead with the World Bank. Now, World Bank, as I told you, created at Bretton Woods. Bretton Woods system, when it was established in 1944, that year itself, they expressed their opinion that we have to have a bank which is leading to the world level. So this World Bank created at Bretton Woods Conference in July 1944, and the objective was provide loans to developing countries for capital program. Now, developing countries like India, China, these were the developing countries. So for capital program, because that time also we were having shortage of our infrastructure. Today also we cannot claim that we are rich with infrastructure. What do you say? Do we reach with the infrastructure development? Can you claim that India is rich with infrastructural facilities?
Not at all, sir.
Not at all. Even today also, now metro, but developed countries, they have been facility long back. Now even in Pune, metro and rest of the part of our India also. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now
Yes, sir.
rest of the part of India, like say Jaipur and other cities, they are also going for this metro project, and then highway. So these are some our capital program. So for capital program, we need a huge amount of fund. So even India has also sought some funds from World Bank in order to have this capital program, like say highways, and then construction of port, construction of aerodrome, and construction of highway. These are some example of capital program. So it requires a huge amount of funds, and this funding, our Indian government, they sought from World Bank. Next point is official goal is to reduce poverty and child mortality. So this is also the noble objective of World Bank, to reduce poverty. Even it was expressed in IMF also. Just now I mentioned in IMF also having this goal to reduce poverty and child mortality. Recently in IMF, they gave one report that in India during this pandemic situation, richer have become more rich. Rich people have become more rich, and poor, the proportion of poor has also increased during this pandemic situation. And yeah, you will be surprised if you read the IMF report. They have mentioned that earlier in India there were 40 richest person whose name were listed in world level from India, and now from 40 it went to 47. So last 1 year, 7 people name has been added in the richest list at world level from India. So earlier it was 40, now it is 47. So this is a surprising thing. Surprising thing. One side, there are people who have lost their job during this pandemic, and the other side, 7 people have enlisted in the richest list of a world. So this is a little bit controversial observation which was given by IMF in last week. If you find time, please read this IMF report. Then another objective of this World Bank to improve maternal health and promote gender equality. Now, gender equality, this is not for India, but even for other countries also. There is a huge difference of gender equality. Now, male and female ratio has to be maintained. Otherwise, if there is an imbalance, then a lot of consequences may happen with that country. So to avoid these consequences, now World Bank is paying attention to this particular point also. Now World Bank created 3 affiliated organizations such as International Development Association, that is IDA, then International Finance Corporation, IFC, and Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, that is MIGA. So as the business increase at world level, so World Bank had created this we can say this sub-agency along with the World Bank. So today we have discussed about World Bank, which was created in 1944. Then we also discussed about IMF, which was created in 1945. And we also discussed about the Bretton Woods system, followed by gold standard. So this was the discussion for today's session. Now in this unit 1, if you have observed last session and today's session, we are just touching to the different points of global issues and the agencies who are playing at a global level. Maybe in next session, we will start unit 2. Any doubt so far? Whatever we have discussed from unit 1, any doubt?
No,
No,
sir.
sir.
Okay, now by the way, when your exam is scheduled, your semester 3 exam, any idea?
So dates are not disclosed.
Acha, dates not disclosed, but I think semester 1 dates are disclosed. Semester 1, MBA semester 1. I think it is starting from 15th February. Just check out your dates also. But before your examination, we will complete our subject, that is international finance. Okay, then rest of the things we will discuss in the next session. Thank you all for attending session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.